Hi, I'm Claire, one of the co-hosts of the Silent Why podcast. We wanted to put together this short episode to explain something you'll hear mentioned a lot on the Silent Why. So one of the questions we like to ask all our guests is, what is your Herman? And we understand this might sound a little strange without a full explanation or some context. So here it is. For anyone that grew up in or had experience of the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, or now, or has any knowledge of the Amish community, you may have come across something called a friendship cake, because this phenomenon pops its head up in practically every decade. Not dissimilar to the chain letters that frequented our inboxes over the years, offering superstitious threats or bestowing you with 3 wishes if you imposed a certain number of others with the same message, friendship cakes were something that were passed on and effectively never died. My experience with them was in the 90s when a friend gave me a used Chinese takeaway Tupperware with some beige goo in it called a friendship cake. The small accompanying note then informed me that my new possession was in fact called Herman, instantly meaning my parents couldn't possibly bin it or kill it because it was already named, and apparently have been passed through many hands, possibly even for generations. Although I suspected it was more likely my friend Stacey had forgotten to feed hers and her mum had to make a fresh batch overnight to save face with other parents, but we'll never know that for sure. So here I am holding my first Herman, apparently named after a sweet Amish cinnamon flavoured bread, which is effectively a cake or a bread starter that's just passed around from person to person and can, in theory, last forever and continues to grow, owing to the yeast and lactic acid bacteria or something, plus the fact it has milk, sugar, flour and warm water all added in to encourage its growth. And he had a few instructions with him. Number 1, he does not like to be refrigerated and is most happy at room temperature, sat on the work surface for the next 10 days. He might have been happy there, I suspect my mother was less so. Number 2, Herman will breathe. That's not scary at all, but basically he just needs to be covered loosely with a tea towel. Number 3, he needs to be stirred occasionally because the yeast in him makes the mixture bubble and make these gurgling sounds. And number 4, he needs to be fed. What the note failed to mention was the fact that because of the yeast, he will smell very strongly of beer. So it's a bit like having a tiny, fat alcoholic lying on the worktop covered in a tea towel so the neighbours don't notice. Then after about 4 days, Herman needs feeding and stirring, and then you repeat this on day 8 as well. On day 9, Herman, who has hopefully grown significantly in this time through many bowls and Tupperwares, is brutally divided into 5 or 6 parts, and all but one of these parts are inflicted on friends or possibly secretly binned. The last part of Herman, which you keep behind, is on the 10th day cooked or made into a bread or a cake, and everybody wonders what the fuss was about because no one has really perfected the art of cooking one of these things, having not practiced it much, and to be honest I don't ever remember anything that came from one of these friendship cakes that tasted any good. Anyway, that's a rough history lesson, but effectively that's what a Herman is. But if you look at it another way, you can also see it as something that has been nourished, grown and cultivated. It's something you can't just go and buy with money. It's to be shared with others and given away. It's alive and breathing, and even though it grows slowly with a bit of care, sharing, it can even outlast you. So that's exactly why we ask our guests, what is your Herman? What has their loss or journey given them that they've cultivated through their experiences and want to pass on to others? So tune into the Silent Why episodes to hear what our guests have chosen to pass on to you. And have a think about what your Herman is. If you stop to think about all you've been through in life, all the losses, all the gains, all the sacrifices, all the blessings, the successes, the disappointments, through all of it, if you could pass something on to help somebody else, what is your Herman?